Okay, there we go. So I won't repeat my my introduction. I'll just say that I started recording after my introduction, but y'all didn't miss too much if you're watching this on YouTube. I did start the captioning though, so captioning should be there. All right, so today's manuscript is a 15th century book of hours, and it is a little bit different. So we've been looking at a lot of book of hours. I decided that this year, 2023, is going to be the year of hours. So I've been trying to bring a lot of books of hours in. We looked at a book of hours last week. We're going to be looking at another one in a couple of weeks. This one is a little bit different from what we've looked at before. This is MS Codex 738, and it's a 15th century book of hours from the Netherlands. So we call it Flemish. It's a Flemish manuscript. And it is notable because the text, rather than being in Latin, is in Dutch. So it's a Dutch translation, and it's a pretty well-known translation as well. Before we get started, I will point out I didn't do this. This was like this when I took it out of the box. The back cover is off too. This is an original binding, apparently, and it is goatskin over boards. There's been a little bit, obviously it's not in great condition. It used to have clasps here. You can see the little holes. There would have been clasps, so some kind of something sort of holding it together, and unfortunately that is gone. But it's still it's got this sort of blind tooling, we call that, decoration on the front. So we get inside. So it's in Dutch, and it's use of Utrecht. So the calendar is for Utrecht, which is a city in the Netherlands. And the translation is a well-known translation by someone called Geert Groote, I believe is how his name is pronounced, also known as Gerhard Groote or Gerardus Magnus, if you are thinking in Latin. And he was a Dutch Catholic dean. He lived between 1340 and 1384. So he died at the age of 44, quite young. He died of the plague, and he was nursing other people who had the plague. And so he was nursing people and he caught the plague, and that's how he died, which is unfortunate. He did many things, apparently. He was very active in the church, obviously. He studied at the University of Paris. And one of the reason that I know him at all is because he translated the texts from the Book of Hours into Dutch. And it was widely copied after the time. So this would have been in the mid 14th century. This manuscript, we don't have an exact date for it, but it's sometime in the 15th century, so the century after he lived. But there are many, many, many copies of Flemish books of hours that survive that contain his translation. Yeah, Bran is asking for the links. Amy, can you put the links back in again, please? So we'll make sure everybody has the links. So the calendar, I've just been paging through it. The calendar looks like any other books of hours calendar. Because it's a rather small book, every month gets 2 pages, and it's not super full. Sometimes you see calendars that have entries on every single day. This is not one of them. But we know from the saints that are named that they're saints in particular that are celebrated in Utrecht. And so that's why they're in there. So that's pretty plain, but there are some decoration. There is some decoration here. In particular, there aren't any miniatures. So miniatures are small illustrations that come sort of in a book of hours. They come before the text starts. And here, let me zoom in a little bit so we can get closer. Before the text starts, and it's sort of like a little illustration to illustrate the text. So this is the start of the hours of the Virgin. That's where the Book of Hours gets its name. It's really a celebration of the Virgin Mary. And in a Book of Hours, you would expect to see a little miniature at the start of the text. Now, there is, of course, an illustration here. I'm not ignoring that. But this is, rather than being a miniature, which is an illustration on its own, this is a historiated initial. There are different types of decorated initials that have pictures in them. A historiated initial in particular has an identifiable scene. So this is Mary and Jesus, baby Jesus, within the letter H. So the letter H is sort of drawn around them. So this is a historiated initial. It's also an illuminated initial because it's got gold here. Let me move a little bit so you can see there's gold there. It's a little bit shiny. So it's illuminated. You could also have, I'm going to forget the other terms. So zoomorphic initials are initials that are in the shapes of animals. So sometimes you'll see dragons or other kinds of creatures. That would be a zoomorphic initial. And then there are initials that have, that are called inhabited initials because they have people in them, but they're not recognizable, so they're not historiated. This is my understanding of sort of how you define it. So it is an illuminated initial that is also historiated. There's Mary and Jesus at the start of the hours of the Virgin, which you would expect. And then you've got these lovely marginal, not like super high quality. I'm comparing it to the one if you were here last week and you looked at that gorgeous Book of Hours from Paris at the University of Leeds. This is not quite as high quality, but it's still very nice. It's got some gold. We've got our little angels in the corners, and that's very neat. So another thing that's happening here, and I'm not entirely sure what this is, but you can see over the text, there's like a shadow or something, not over the initials, but over the main text. And it's over here too. I think that was an attempt at some kind of highlighting by the scribe or someone after, because it seems like it's purposeful. And sometimes you see shadows like this. If someone has come in later and the text was hard to read, sometimes in the 19th century, you have people come in with chemicals and sort of paint them over. I don't think that's what's happening. I think that this was an attempt at decoration that just didn't quite work because it just doesn't look great. But it's not on every page. So if we turn the page here, it shows through. So this is sort of bleeding through from the other side. But they didn't do it here. So I'll just page through because there's a lot here. So where there aren't the illuminations, it's pretty plain. We do have these blue and red initials, and some rubrication otherwise there. So it's a nice manuscript, but not super fancy. It is also, I don't know if you can see through the camera, but there's been some water damage around the edges. So it's sort of soaked through here, and it's even sort of covers the text up here. It's a little bit, it hasn't like smeared the ink too badly. It looks like they got it out of the water and were able to save it, but there's still some thing here. Oh, and here's a little bit more smeared over on this side. Maybe you can see that, but we've got some gold. So a nicer initial there with pink with a little white. That's quite pretty. So there we go. Oh no. Sorry, Ro isn't hearing me. I hope everyone else can hear me, but it should be picked up in the recording. So sorry when that stuff like that happens. All right. Okay. Great. Yeah, I think sometimes there's technical issues and there's just not a whole lot I can do. Oop, I think here's another, here we go. Another one of these. And like the other one, this is an initial G and the word is God. So I'm sure there's instances of the word God that doesn't have a fancy initial G, but I like that they're using it there. So that's nice here. Ooh. Let's see. Oh, here's another one. There's another one. God wilt. God wilt. The nice thing about Dutch is it's a little tiny bit like German, and so it's a little tiny bit like English. Just a little bit. God wilt. And so you can get a closer view of the text there. So it is the same, it's a Gothic script. It's the same script that you would expect to see with written Latin. It's just, instead of Latin, it's written in Dutch, which is sort of nice. Oop. Uh-oh, here we go. I'm having issues with my, I'm just gonna lay this here for just a second so I can get this back together. Here we go. There we go. All right. Here we are. More of these. And I haven't been pointing it out, but there are, maybe it's big. I can't tell if it's, I think there's actually not water damage here, but this, whatever this black ink that's being used for these decorations seems to like to rub off on the other side of the page. So not great, but a thing that definitely happens. And it's certainly a different kind of ink. It's a darker ink than what's being used in the text there. All right, so that's the hour. Oh no, there's a bee. We're breaking the pattern there. And I'm noticing that these decorations in the margin are actually a little bit different from time to time. So this one sort of grows out of the center here, and this one is actually sort of two separate. It's almost like it's growing out of the corners. So that's sort of fun. So it's not just duplicated from page to page. There's a little bit of special that's going on. All right. So now we are through the Hours of the Virgin, and we're on to the Hours of the Holy Cross, which is another text that you see a lot in Latin books of hours. And now we're seeing it here again. All of the texts in here are translated by Geert Groote. I'm sure I'm pronouncing his name incorrectly, but that is all of his. And I didn't look at the structure, but it looks like this is a new choir here, which is sort of interesting because it means that potentially when they were actually making the book, that the calendar was done over here and the Hours of the Virgin was done in another section, and this was done in another section, and then they were put together. So it's sort of fun to look at. All right, we have another historiated initial. This is known as the Man of Sorrows, so it is Jesus, but he's holding sort of in one hand, it's like he would use it to hit himself. I can't think of the word, but yeah. Ooh, somebody's pointing out the cute goblin in the corner. Yeah, here we go. Let's take a closer look at him. He almost looks like a little like a little owl actually down there. And then up in the other corner, it's actually kind of sweet. It looks like a couple of lovebirds, like little birds having a nice personal time in there. So that's very pretty. I need a new I need a new arm for my camera because it keeps threatening to fall over. I hope it will not fall over while we're on camera. That would be pretty embarrassing. Okay, so this is going to be a little bit shorter. Again, we've got this highlight or attempted highlight going on there, which is a little bit weird. I like the green, although it has also sort of marked up the other side of the page, which is too bad. All right, let's see. Here's more of these with the decoration. God wilt. There, little suns kind of going out to the side. I like that a lot. Let's see, here's another one. Another sort of, well, this one is growing out of the middle too. Let's see, there's another God wilt. This one has blue. I think the last one I paid attention to had pink there. So we've got pink and green. Flagellation, thank you. The scourge. I'm not sure. That sounds right though. That sounds right. Let's see, God wilt up there. There we go. And again with the bee, it's a little different. Okay, so that was the hours of the cross. Here we have something a little different. This is the short hours of the Holy Cross. So first we had the hours of the Holy Cross, and now we have the short hours of the Holy Cross. And this one, I don't know why, does not have anything in that initial. It could be that it was prepared and the artist just didn't get around to it. But at least it's got sort of a nice blue in there. And again, this highlight or whatever we want to call it there. And then a nice, this is not quite as decorative as the other margins. This is more like the ones that we're seeing in the middle of the text. Let's see, Amy, it also looks as though there's writing under the letter background. Like behind the H, you mean? Oh, it does, doesn't it? I never noticed that. It does a little. I can sort of see over here in the brown. So that would be something interesting to look at, I suppose. We don't really have time to do that here. But if you took the high, because there's the high resolution photos that are online, and maybe it could be the page behind. Excuse me. But it could be that if you took the high-res image and did some things with it in Photoshop, you might be able to see if there's something behind it. All right. Let's see. Or it could just be sort of bleeding behind. All right. Here's a God wilt. More of these margins. Oh, this is nice. That's nice. Let's see. Oh, here's one that doesn't have its own marginal decoration there. So that's sort of interesting. All right. Ooh, two-facing. This is different and new. And we've got, this is nice. So we've got a blue with a green background, or sorry, the pink background, and then a pink with a blue background. So they are going sort of back and forth with that. And there we have the that's nice. All right, next. So this is interesting. The next text is one that I hadn't heard of. It's by Henricus Suso, and the title of the work is Little Book of Eternal Wisdom. And it was also translated by Groote. It is, so Suso, I had to look him up. He was a German Dominican friar who lived in sort of the early 14th century. And he was a popular vernacular writer. He wrote actually in Middle High German. And he wrote this work around 1328 to 1330. And so this is a translation of that work, presumably from the German. Although, as Joseph is pointing out in the chat, the rubrication is a mixture of Dutch and Latin. And the title that was actually in our records, not in the main record, but in the record that I took from behind Amy's desk this morning, is in Latin. So there's a sort of, it's sort of to be expected that you're translating, these texts are translated from vernacular to Latin and then back again. So that might be what's happening here. But as far as I know, this is not a common text. I've never seen this text in a Latin book of hours before. It could be something that's, if it's part of his translation, it could be something that's you see in Flemish manuscripts more, books of hours. All right. And then we have Christ in the attitude of benediction in this initial, and again, this lovely little marginal decoration with the little birds up in the corner and another strange little guy that we'll take a closer look at here. He's sort of, looks like he's vomiting out the vines that are decorating the rest of the page. So that's sort of interesting. All right, let me pull this up. Here we go. There we go. All right. And more of this, God wilt, there. Very nice. Oh, that's been smeared a little bit. That's too bad. Let's see, I think there's a couple more texts in here. There we go, that's the end. And the next one, this is the Hours of the Holy Spirit. And the illustration is Pentecost, in this great letter H. So we've got the Holy Spirit there, sort of, I don't know if you can see, but that the white dove right up on top is there. And I'm seeing also, Amy, we were mentioning the text that we could see through the previous initial. I'm also seeing it here, and I think that it's probably showing through the back of the page. But it might not be. So that would be interesting. I'm not sure what it would be if it wasn't. Here we go. It really has a lot of these pages. When I looked at it earlier, it didn't feel like there were quite that many, but now it seems like there's a lot more of them. Ooh, and I feel like we're getting more of this water damage too. So maybe the front and the back somehow is more heavily damaged. All right. Next, we get the 7 penitential psalms. These are very typically seen in books of hours in Latin. We have some. I just think this is really nice. So we obviously we've got Jesus sitting here. sort of sitting on the, it's not a rainbow exactly because there aren't lots of colors, but this is an image that you sort of see a lot, is him sort of sitting on this bow. We have angels playing music up at the top. And then if anyone knows what is happening down here, please share, because I love this. It looks like they're naked people in boats, maybe. But I think this is delightful. And I don't know what is going on. I hope it's something nice and not something bad. But that is, yeah, the margins are different. And I don't know, I am not an art historian. I don't know if it's different people. Oh, it could be the souls being judged. It's very weird because then there's like these triangular almost holes. It's like holes in the sky with people faces looking through. I'm not sure, but I think it's delightful. And maybe they're not having fun, but there we go. Oh, and here's the lists of saints. You see this? See that a lot. All right. And then the last thing, and again, very popular in books of hours, is the Hours of the Dead. And so we have the ever popular Hellmouth, and it's a letter O, I think, which is pretty great. Like, what a great opportunity to put a Hellmouth open mouth there. So we have all the poor souls that we're going to be praying for in the mouth of hell, and the usual margins, including our little guy down here at the bottom. So that's it for this book of hours. The very last thing that's sort of interesting that I wanted to share with you is after the book of hours, we get to the end, and on the verso of the last leaf here, and then going on into the fly leaves, which again, the back cover here has come up part 2, into the fly leaves. This is a later owner in the 16th century has come in and recorded some family history here. So this person, the dates, there's 1580, and then 1648, I think, is that date. So sort of saying, here's my family, talking about brother, sister, father. And we actually have a transcription of this in our notes. So if you are interested in this, thanks for coming, Mathilde. If you are interested, I can share this with you. You could also take a look at the high-res images online. So that is, I'll let you see the back there. So this is MS Codex 738, Flemish Book of Hours. That's pretty fun. We haven't looked at one of those before. So so now you know what a Flemish Book of Hours looks like. So thank you, everyone, for coming. And we'll be back next week. And I hope you all have a great week.